council meeting of the Village of Armada will now come to order. Will everyone rise for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Shaw?
Here.
Clark?
Here.
Conan?
Here.
Bullock?
Here.
Ballard?
Here.
Cooper? Here. Belkey? Here.
Approval of the agenda. What's the council's wishes?
I make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Support.
Moved and supported. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
At this time, citizens' comments. State your name for the record and about 3 minutes at the limit, in other words. Anyone would like to address the council at this time? No citizen comments. There will be no presentations tonight. Administrative reports, the building department, you have that from the building inspector. Commissioner liaison reports. Any commissioner have a report?
Planning Commission is going to have a public hearing on land split on the Kraus Veterinarian property. And that'll be on what, 10/2 is it? Monday, first Monday in October.
Okay.
Pardon?
It's October 2nd.
Okay, October 2nd. Thank you, Sam.
Very good. Anything else? If not, the planning commission meeting, that takes care of that day. Is that right, Dave?
Yes.
Good, okay. General business, consent agenda. Approval of the regular council meeting minutes as of August 28th, and payment of bills, a special event permit application, which is Armada area schools, and a homecoming of the schools.
Homecoming parade.
Mr. President, I'll move the consent agenda be accepted as presented.
I'll second.
Moved and supported. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I just wanted to let you guys know that Chief Patrick talked to Ms. Kukuru, who is the one that organizes the homecoming parade, to tell her that he would like to see no candy being thrown. If they're going to have candy given out, he wants people walking, you know, beside the floats. That's a safety issue. Last year we noticed some, kids about hitting the volleyball and walking in front, walking in and out of the cars going through. So he did ask them to not do that. So I just wanted everybody to know, if you're up there, to just keep an eye out for that. It's hard for her to do completely too, because, it's a parade. So, and Chief Mike will be at the front, so just keep your eyes open. So they're aware that those are stipulations. We just don't want anybody getting hurt. There's too many little kids that run out to get the candy, and those are moving vehicles, and there's a lot of commotion, and there's a lot of people downtown, distractions, so we don't want anybody getting hurt, so.
Any further discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. There's no old business tonight. New business, we have the auditors here with us tonight. So we'll have the auditor's report. Curtis and Amy is here from McBride Manley. And so you have the floor, Mr. McBride and Amy, please.
Thank you, Mark. Hey, there's going to be a very bright light.
Bright light in my face? I know that bright light.
I'm ready to move forward.
No.
You're not gonna see much afterwards. It's gonna be like that forever.
You get me every time, every single time.
I think, first of all, good evening, Village Council. I think most of you know who I am, but I'll reintroduce myself. My name is Curtis McBride. I'm a CPA for McBride Manley & Company. We are the audit firm who audits the Village of Armada's books and records and financial statements. I've been with our firm for just over 17 years. and I've been involved with the village's audit since I started. And with me this evening is Amy Delia. She has been with our firm for just over 10 years, and she's also been involved in the village's audit since day one when she started. So she's been on the village's audit for 10 years. Now, before I get into the slides, I just want to point out that I actually handed out a physical copy of my presentation, so you can follow that way instead of looking at the projector. The only thing I do ask is that you do not distribute my presentation to the general public, since it is only a summarized version of our full audit report, which is contained in this bound booklet here. I'm actually going to start here with the bound booklet. It's okay if you don't open it. There are 2 pages in here that is what I call our independent auditor's report. So that's the only thing in this booklet that belongs to our firm. And then the rest of the information in here, which is all financial related, is actually the Village of Armada's financial statements. Now, there are 3 types of opinions you can receive from an auditor. There is what we call an unmodified or clean audit opinion, which means that we believe that your financial records and your financial statements are reliable and they're in compliance with our professional standards. And then there's what we call a modified audit opinion, which means that for the most part we believe that they are reliable, but there may be a few exceptions to that. And then the 3rd type of opinion you can receive is what we call an adverse audit opinion, which means that we do not believe the financial statements are reliable at all and they're not in compliance with our standards. So before getting into the financial information, I am pleased to announce that at March 31, 2017, our audit firm gave the Village of Armada a clean or unmodified audit opinion. So that's the highest opinion you can receive from your auditor. Now I just want to clarify, that just simply means we believe your financial statements are in compliance with our standards. We're not providing an opinion on the financial health of the Village of Armada. That's not the primary focus of our audit. Now moving over to the slides. The first fund that I want to review is the general fund. Now, the general fund primarily derives its revenues from property taxes and distributions from the state of Michigan for state sales tax. Now, here we're looking at the balance sheet for the general fund at March 31st. So you can see the general fund finished the year with about $446,000 in total assets, primarily in the form of cash. So the general fund had about $281,000 in cash on hand at the end of the year, and another $106,000 in investments, which is really a CD. And as I mentioned, you finished the year with about $446,000 in total assets. You had liabilities against those assets of about $132,000 during the year to finish with an ending fund balance of about $314,000. Now, one thing I want to mention is that for March 31, 2017, your general fund does not include anything related to the salvage inspection program. Per our recommendation last year, you guys actually moved that into its own separate fund, so it did not distort anything related to the general fund. So when you're looking at this fund balance, this in fact is the general fund's balance. It has nothing to do with the salvage inspection program. I'll talk about the fund balance level a little bit more in my subsequent slide. Now here we're looking at the statement of revenues and expenditures and changes in fund balance for the general fund for the year March 31st, 2017. So this is the income statement, if you will, for the general fund. You can see the general fund generated about $351,000 in property taxes during the year, had another $168,000 in distributions from the state of Michigan for state sales tax revenue sharing, and finished the year with about $732,000 in total revenues. It spent about $747,000 in expenditures, and then it had some other miscellaneous income, primarily from the disposal of some fixed assets of about $12,000. Now the general fund lost about $3,200 during the year. So the general fund used about $3,200 of its fund balance through March 31st, 2017 to finish the year with an ending fund balance of about $314,000. Now to put that into perspective, the state of Michigan Department of Treasury recommends that at a minimum, the general fund balance be at 10% of annual expenditures. Now that's the recommended minimum. So what that means is once your fund balance level starts approaching that 10% threshold, you really need to start taking steps to build it back up and ensure it does not fall below that threshold. Now, at the end of 2017, the general fund balance was at about 41%, roughly, of annual expenditures. I'm going to go into some trend analysis for the general fund a little bit later on. The thing to keep in mind with fund balance level is not only do you have to look at it as a percentage of expenditures in the fund, but you also have to look at the trend. Is the general fund balance trending upward or is it trending downward? That's something we'll visit a little bit later. Now this next slide, we're actually going to look at the street funds. So here we're looking at the major local and municipal street funds. These funds are different from the general fund in that they are what we call special revenue funds. And we call them that because their fund balances are restricted for a special purpose. And that purpose is for the maintenance and construction of streets throughout the village. Now here we're looking at the balance sheet. So starting with the local street fund, you can see the local street fund finished the year with about $49,000 in total assets and had obligations against those assets of about $4,000 to finish the year with a fund balance of about $45,000. Now the major street fund had total assets of about $78,000 at the end of the year, had liabilities against those assets of about $27,000, and finished the year with an ending fund balance of about $51,000. Now, the municipal street fund had about $303,000 of total assets at the end of the year, had liabilities of about $6,000 at the end of the year, and finished the year with an ending fund balance of about $298,000 through March 31st, 2017. Now this next slide is the income statement for these three funds. So you can see, starting with the local street fund on the left, the local street fund generated about $52,000 in total revenues for 2017. It had expenditures of about $76,000 for the year, but it actually received $41,500 from the municipal street fund. So the municipal street fund transferred $41,500 over to the local street fund to help it out. So the local street fund finished the year with an ending fund balance of about $45,000, or about 58% of its annual expenditures in the fund. Now the major street fund generated about $91,000 in total revenues. It spent about $82,000 during the year and finished the year with an ending fund balance of about $51,000, or roughly 62% of annual expenditures in the fund. Now the municipal street fund, you can see, generated almost all of its revenues from property taxes. So there's actually a tax millage to pay to help fund the municipal street fund. And really the purpose of the municipal street fund is really to help supplement the major and local streets. So it would be normal for the municipal street fund to transfer money over to the major and local street funds, as long as that money is used for the construction and maintenance of streets throughout the village. So you can see it generated $143,000 in revenues. It spent about $42,000 during the year, and then of course it transferred $41,500 over to the local street fund to finish the year with an ending fund balance of about $298,000, which is actually more than 100% of its expenditures. So again, I think these three funds have healthy fund balances. The one fund I do definitely want to talk about briefly because it is new this year and it's no longer accounted for in the general fund. It's the salvage inspection fund. So this is obviously the fees from the salvage inspection program. So the salvage inspection program generated about $321,000 in revenues for 2017. It spent about $242,000 during the year and had a profit of about $79,000 through 2017, and it had an ending fund balance of about $228,000. Now the thing to keep in mind, as I mentioned in the prior few years, the fund balance for the vehicle inspection program cannot be used for general operating purposes. It has to be restricted and has to remain in this fund for its intended purpose. Now, on this next slide, we're looking at some revenue trends. Here I'm going all the way back to 2011. So we're looking at state revenue sharing and distributions to street funds. So state revenue sharing would actually be the state sales tax revenues that are going into the general fund. And then the distribution to the street funds would be the amounts that the major local street funds are receiving from the Michigan Department of Transportation. So starting with revenue sharing here at the middle column, you can see that the general fund received about $137,000 during 2011, and that number has come up to about $168,000 for 2017. So that's a positive trend. It's trending upward for state sales tax. And you can see a very similar relationship here for distributions to the street funds. The Michigan Department of Transportation gave the major local street funds about $89,000 or $90,000 in 2011, and it gave them about $142,000 at 2017. So again, an upward or positive trend for those revenues. Now this next slide is presents a little bit of a different situation. So here we're going all the way back to 2011 and looking at property taxes. Here we're looking at general operating taxes as well as your municipal street fund levy. So it includes both. So you can see the peak year here was actually 2011, where you generated about $532,000 in property taxes. And you can see that number had fallen all the way down to about $456,000 at the end of 2013. So you had $75,000 less in property taxes to work with in 2013 than you did in 2011. And although you can see it is trending upward, even at March 31, 2017, where you generated about $492,000 in property taxes, that's still substantially less than it was all the way back in 2011. It's about $40,000 less. So, as you all know, in both the general and municipal street funds, the cost of operating those funds have gone up over that same time period. So, wages are going up by the cost of inflation, and that's, per contracts. And of course, all your operating supplies and things of that nature are also going up roughly by the cost of living, which ranges anywhere from 2 to 3% over that time period. So you're having to deal with that, and at the same time, you have less property tax revenues coming in to try to pay for those costs. Now this next slide is the 5-year historical fund balance trend in the general fund. So here we're going back to 2013. You can see in 2013 the general fund had about $364,000 in ending fund balance. That number climbed up to about $442,000 in 2014, but you can see between 2014 and 2017, which is the year that just ended, the general fund actually used about $128,000 of its fund balance. So that's pretty substantial. So you used $128,000, if you think of it this way, out of a starting point of $442,000. So although when you look at the general fund balance alone and you compare it to its annual expenditures, it does appear to be healthy. It's obviously going on a downward trend. So the village does have to take measures to ensure that they reverse this trend and that they do not approach that 10% threshold. And I just want to go a step further with this 10% recommendation given by the Michigan Department of Treasury. I'm personally a little bit more conservative. I think in a community the size of Armada, because of your small size, in my opinion, that minimum threshold is more like 15 or 20%. Because you could technically have a fund balance of about $150,000 or $200,000 and still be over that recommended minimum, but that really doesn't give you a lot of room for savings if you had a major issue pop up. It'd be very easy to spend that very quickly. So I just wanted to point that out. Now the last two funds I want to talk about are the water and sewer funds. Now these funds are quite a bit different than the general fund and the street funds, in that they are accounted for more similar to that of a private for-profit company. So these are what we call enterprise funds or proprietary funds. Now we call them proprietary funds because they are intended to be self-sustaining. So the water and sewer funds actually charge the village residents for the use of the systems, and they're intended to be self-sustaining. So here we're looking at the balance sheet or the statement of net position, starting with the sewer fund. You can see the sewer fund finished the year with about $3.4 million in total assets. But you can see most of those assets are in a category called non-current assets, fixed assets. of about $2.8 million. Now that would actually be, it really in both of these funds, the water and sewer, these are the actual water and sewer plants themselves and all the lines and major equipment associated with those funds. We call them non-current because they're not assets that are easily converted to cash. You can't pay bills with fixed assets, so that's why we have them as non-current or non-liquid assets. So the sewer fund finished the year with $3.4 million in assets, had about $39,000 in total liabilities, and finished the year with a net position of about $3,370,000. But the portion of net position you want to focus on is the unrestricted portion. So that's the net position that is not tied up in those fixed assets that I was just talking about, those non-liquid assets. So that currently sits at about $268,000 in the sewer fund, or roughly about 50% of annual expenses. That would be equivalent to the general fund balance, if you will, in the sewer fund. And I think that is healthy. In the water fund, you can see you had about $4.194 million in total assets at the end of the year. Most of that is in those non-current assets of about $3,679,000. The water fund had total liabilities of $1,516,000 at the end of the year, primarily in the form of a bond. So you can see the water fund at the end of March 31, 2017 had $1,509,000 out there in a dwarf bond, which actually matures in October 2024. Now, the water fund finished the year with a total net position of $2,678,000, but again, focusing on that unrestricted portion, which is equivalent to fund balance, it's at about $467,000, which is actually more than 100% of its expenses. So I think you're okay in both of these funds. I certainly would not say that they're excessive. I've been talking about this for the last several years. I just want to keep bringing it up. Although the salvage vehicle inspection program is not new to the village, it really has only taken off really over the last few years. So just a reminder, the maximum fee for an inspection is $100, and that's what the village charges. The fees collected for the salvage vehicle inspection program can only be used for law enforcement purposes that affect stolen vehicles, vehicle parts, and inspections. Can't be used for any other reason. The money cannot be transferred over to the general fund for general operating expenditures, so it's restricted for that purpose. Recommendations, and you guys have followed these, I just wanted to put these up here. We did recommend that you create a separate fund for this, and you did. So in these financial statements, you'll see there is a salvage vehicle inspection fund, and that was effective at the beginning of the year. And then the state of Michigan discourages inspectors from handling cash. So that and I believe from my discussions of when we were here a few months ago that you guys have taken care of that. So the officers and inspectors are no longer handling cash. The checks are actually being written directly to the village of Armada. That way the officers are never handling those funds. Just want to briefly talk about our audit process so you guys know what we do when we come in here. I know Joe and Michelle and certainly Becky know what we do because we have all the information in here and all the boxes are out. But just to give you guys a little bit of a summary. Our audit is performed on all the accounting functions for the village. So I just listed some of the major ones here. So this would be purchasing, cash receipts, utility billing, adjusting journal entries, payroll, and bank reconciliation. So for purchasing, we're actually looking at copies of invoices. We're making sure that items are being purchased that are appropriate for the village. No one's slipping personal bills in the village's invoices. We're making sure they're being approved by someone in management, and then that there's a second level of approval at the council level. So we're making sure that all the bills that are being paid here at the village are being approved at two levels. We're also looking at cash receipts. We're making sure that nothing happens to cash from the time it comes here into the office to the time it gets deposited into the bank. We're looking at utility billing, so this would be the water and sewer billing. We're making sure that the rates that are being charged to the residents are appropriate and they've been approved by the council. We're making sure that the clients or the residents are being billed at the correct rates and at the correct usage or consumption. We're also looking at adjusting journal entries. So this would be anything, that someone had to go in and make a correction to something within the ledger. We want, number one, we want to make sure there's a good reason for that. And number two, we want to make sure that there is documentation of support for that adjustment. We're looking at payroll, so we're making sure that all employees are being paid at the appropriate rates, which have been approved by council. We're making sure that they're being paid for time that they've worked. And we're also making sure that all the payroll taxes are being paid. And of course, we're doing our own independent bank reconciliations outside of what the village does internally. We also do year-end reconciliations to prepare the financial statements. And then one thing, just briefly talking about this, in order to complete our audit, we prepare what was called an audit program. So this is a checklist of everything that we have to do to complete your audit. Now, many of the steps are things that we are required to do under our professional standards, and then there are a lot of other steps that we do that are unique to you as the village. So we actually look at your environment and we try to identify any risks, and then we customize some audit procedures based on that information. And of course, we're in contact with the village throughout the year, so whether that's Becky or Joe or Michelle, we assist with any questions regarding any transactions. This really helps us identify any potential accounting or auditing issues early. And that's really an ideal relationship. You really don't want a situation where we come in after the year is over and there hasn't been any communication and then there are issues that can't be fixed. So this really helps us identify issues early and really makes our audit go a lot more smoothly than it would otherwise. We also assist with the state filings and compliance, so we had to file an Act 51 report based on your street funds. We have to do an F-65 annual filing, which is almost equivalent to a tax return, if you will, for a municipality. We also provide EBIP support for state sales tax revenue sharing. There are various things you have to file with the Department of Treasury to get your state revenue sharing. And of course, we also submit the annual audit to the state of Michigan. So those are just some of the things that we do throughout the year to assist the village with the audit. That's all I have. If you guys have any questions for me?
We do have upcoming, the DDA bond payment is due, and that's one of the things I called Curtis on today, and like you said, he helps us out with things to kind of offset any problems we would have later. As you all know, the general fund is going to be picking up the DDA's payment. The DDA fund bank account is still there because, as we've reported throughout the audit, the tax increase revenue is coming up a little bit. So the DDA will start to see some revenue coming. It's not going to be anything to write home about, but it'll be something. So that is a dedicated fund. That'll have to go into the DDA fund. So I called him today just to verify that, do we want to close that off or do the transfer after everything comes out of general. So Curtis did say that's something that we need to be aware of because it is a concern that we're picking up that extra debt.
Absolutely, and like you said, you bring up a great point. I was talking about the general fund balance, the trend. There is an outstanding DDA bond out there, I think it's $350,000, or it was at March 31st, 2017. Now, the DDA fund is not capturing a lot of property taxes anymore because of the property value decline that occurred drastically in those 2 years back in 2009 and 2010. So as a result, the general fund is now going to be responsible for making the debt payments for the DDA bond. And that's going to be roughly $30,000 to $40,000 a year, running all the way through 2027 is when that bond matures. So you're going to have to find $30,000 or $40,000 in your general fund that you didn't have to worry about in the past. So that's just one thing that you have to keep in mind.
When does that start? When do we have to make that first payment? It's due by end of October.
Yeah, so it's coming up right now.
Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah, due November 1st, so it's got to be paid and approved through council by mid-October. I'll probably put it on next schedule.
Did you forward that information regarding State Representative Roach for the salvage title to Curtis? the possible legislation change that he's trying to get through for salvage title?
No, because I don't have anything to forward, I mean, just what he said.
Yeah, it was that email. Okay, all right. We're looking at possible legislation that'll let us use it for wages, so
Hopefully.
hopefully.
Well, and it's a very, the program's been around for a while, the salvage inspection program, but really, and I'm certainly not picking on the state of Michigan, but it's really not monitored, in my opinion, very well by the state of Michigan. You know, it just really isn't. And from an audit standpoint, you know, we're always conservative, you know, and we get nervous about it, so we really spend a lot of time focusing on that program on our end, because I know administratively at the state of Michigan, you know, they're not really paying a lot of attention to the controls over the program.
Or even the content of the program.
That's right.
Or they would, you know, they would be more flexible, they would be more conducive to finding more things that it could be used for. So I think that's where he's got a good step, you know, good foot in the door for that.
Right.
Other than that, I mean, we all, Curtis, a big thank you. We had
Thank you.
a great year working with him.
Good job, Chris.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for your time.
As always, Curtis,
Thank
always
you.
great.
Thank you, Curtis.
Hey Curtis, what did
Maybe-
you have in front of that?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Would you like me to
Just
make a motion, President Wallach? Would you like me to make a motion?
Yes, it's proper.
I'll make a motion to accept the audit for fiscal year ending March 31st, 2017, and to place on file.
Support.
It has been moved and supported that we set the audit fiscal report ending March 31st and place it on file.
Perfect.
Any further discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Next is,
A little break, if you guys want to stay the whole meeting, or?
We'll stay.
Oh, okay. That's so exciting.
So here going, what, really?
Yeah, I'll talk to you when we get back to the office.
next is the appointments to the ZBA Planning Commission. ZBA, excuse me, only. Commission. Our committee has met with the two applicants, and they have recommended that the two are here in the resolution. So what is the council's wishes?
Mr. President, I resolve to appoint Mike St. John to the zoning board of appeals to a term ending December 31, 2019, subject to the appointee meeting the qualifications set forth in Chapter 2 of the village charter.
Support.
Moved and supported. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Next one.
Mr. President, I'll resolve to appoint Don DePalma to the zoning board of appeals to a term ending December 31, 2019, subject to the appointee meeting the qualifications set forth in Chapter 2 of the village charter.
Support.
By Steve. Moved and supported. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
The reason the planning commission was not on the agenda now at this time, there was 2 calls made. The applicant did not come in for the interview. So that is the reason. So it will have to be revisited.
And Don, you'll need to come in and be sworn in before the first meeting. So, okay, just call me and we'll set something up. Okay, anytime, because I can come back up, so.
Okay.
Okay.
And Joe, this is your department, the credit card policy amendments?
Yeah, this was just a simple thing. Becky and I were reviewing it one day, and actually Becky caught that the bank name was wrong. That the credit cards are through Lakestone Bank, so we just updated wherever it needed to be plugged in. So we've already approved the credit cards and everything, it's just, that needs to be changed in that. So it's a simple just update, so it's an FYI for you, there's no action to be taken.
Oh, you don't need the,
You don't need to.
you don't need to approve, accept the amendment? No.
You can.
I would recommend do so.
Okay, Mr. President, resolve to accept the amendments to the purchase credit card guideline policy.
Support.
Moved and supported, any further discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Wastewater treatment plant, grid building. This is Mr. Clark's department. You wish to address anything on that, Mr. Clark?
Sure. We had 4 bids come in. I had talked to Doug Skylas. He gave me a phone call the other day. I was up north. I wasn't around for the opening of the bids. As far as I'm concerned, we had some really great news, especially having 4 bids when we only had 1, which was extremely high before. And this also includes, it's not only the makeup air and ventilation, but also takes care of the heating situation there too. So the only thing that we have to, that Doug has to do is to amend the finish date because there's a long wait time on getting this unit. But they are going to be able to do work. They'll do whatever they can, and once that unit comes in, they'll be able to plug it right in. So unless anybody has any questions, I'll make a motion.
I just want to say Watson Brothers, I dealt with them through the nursing home, they were very good company.
Very good company.
Yeah.
Very good.
Now, Doug said to me that he had not personally dealt with them,
Yes,
but he did speak with the gentleman, and they did check up on some history, and
Yeah.
the company has been around for a very, very long time.
He was the only one that was present from
Yes.
his company during the
Yeah,
openings.
he said that too, so.
Yeah, they're a good company.
They are from Port Huron, aren't they?
Port Huron.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are.
Yeah. We've had numerous boilers and different things done by Watson. They do a real impeccable job, very good job.
Okay, very good. Good to know. And again, I would like to thank Doug and Mike very much that kind of saved us here with this due date that we had to meet. I resolve to accept the bid from Watson Brothers Service Company in the not-to-exceed amount of $78,000 for the HFDAC improvements to the grid building at the wastewater treatment plant.
Support.
Moved and supported, any further discussion? How soon would they be starting this then, possibly, Steve?
Oh,
Do you have any kind of benefit?
I got some paperwork here.
You have to have a notice to proceed in by
Right.
September
Yeah.
30th.
Yeah, which we will easily get that done. But as far as the actual start, I'm sorry, I don't have that right at the moment, so, but it'll be, I'm just reading here, the completion date was gonna be November 10th, it is now moved to December 15th,
Right.
but I don't see.
Begin
here-
work in
Well, 10
October.
weeks, yeah, so,
Yeah.
Yeah,
so it's gotta be in October.
yeah.
So this will be all in compliance with our S2 grant and everything
That
else.
puts us in.
That puts us in
We'll be
compliance.
well satisfied with the DNR or,
DEQ.
DEQ.
Yes.
yes.
Okay,
Very good.
well,
Any other
thank you,
questions?
everybody.
Any other questions? If not, we're going to be a roll call on this.
Clark,
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Belkey,
Yes.
Cooper,
Yes.
Conan,
Yes.
Wallach,
Yes,
Bailey.
Yes.
motion carried. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, thank you,
Good job,
everybody.
Steve.
Good job, Steve.
Michelle, this is your item.
Are you Larry?
Yes, I'm there.
Hi, Larry. Okay, a while back, we discussed changing our paper of record. And at that time, I made a few phone calls. I really couldn't get definite numbers because when you say who gets the papers in Armada, it's not distinguished between the village and the township and, you know. But I made a phone call to the record after talking to Marv. We got a bill from The Voice, who is now going to be charging us a subscription fee. So I called them and I said, well, you're our paper of record. We advertised in you for, we put our synopsis, all of our legal notices, everything. I said, you're really gonna charge me a $28 a year? I know it's insignificant, it's kind of just the point. And and they said, well, no, that's new this year. So they were not willing to not charge that. I feel very strongly that the Voice does not do a whole lot of Armada business, I don't know if anybody would disagree with that, but the record is, they're trying to be, local. They're trying to be the northern end here. And I called Larry, who's here, talked to him about costs to see if they would be comparable in cost for our synopsises, for our legal notices. He had actually sent me over some pricing, which I got to you, but for me to look at that pricing and say, yeah, that's better than what we're paying, I just sent him one of my synopsises and said, here, tell me what you charge me for this. Came back a little bit high, so he and I talked, but he agreed that he can get down. Did we say a little less per column inch, or?
Yeah, I think the error that was made too is when I did the quick, real quick, I added up the total there. I actually used the wrong type font size. So when I put it to the right font size, it came out equal.
Equal. Okay, good. Okay. So I just wanted to bring it to you guys since it's something that we have done every 2 years. We appoint a record of choice. We needed to change that since the Voice was actually through the end of the year. So, I think November next year, possibly. I think that November next year. So it's up to you guys, but I just wanted to tell you that it's a more comparable price.
I think it's a good idea, and I like the paper. I used them for Armada Jams, and it's very small town feeling. It's more
It's
of,
the Armada Times again.
the Voice doesn't really even cover our area.
Thank you.
Not really. I mean,
Good idea.
yeah. So that's what the motion is to change it. So.
Mr. President, I'll resolve to confirm the President's designation of the record as the official paper for publication of official notices for a term expiring November 21,
19. I have 18. Let's do 19.
2019.
Sorry.
I'll second.
And the reason it goes to November of 2019 is, oh wait, no, it would be 18. I'm sorry. Can you amend that to 18? I was right.
I'll change it to 18.
Beginning. Is because that's an election year. And when positions change, the president, after that meeting, the first meeting when they're the new president, that's when they set this stuff. So.
Goes with the term.
It goes with the term. So.
Okay, any further discussion?
Yes. Lauren?
Yes.
It's fantastic coverage of Romeo. Soccer team's doing great. We got all their standings, and that's really wonderful. Actually, I run the clock for Romeo football. However, and we do have an Armada sports schedule, but I would like to see the scores and maybe a little more Armada coverage.
Yeah, I'm looking for Armada sports writer.
So we need an Armada sports writer.
Dave, you're already there.
Oh, but perhaps somebody out there will hear this.
Yes.
Miss Bagel would be an excellent sports writer for Armada.
She actually would be, yeah. Volunteer her for something.
Anyhow, thank you.
Will the community residents be getting, like, any free copies to start, or?
I could, we do free sampling from time to time, and I can make sure everybody in the village gets a copy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that'd be good.
I think this would get your paper exposed.
Yes.
Well, if they start covering Armada stuff, maybe more Armada people will buy the
Yes,
paper,
yeah.
you know?
We were actually surprised when we heard that the Armada Times, folded, or they folded into the
They
Voice.
both, yeah,
And then the
that was
Voice
sad.
I have a
Yeah.
question.
Yes.
Will you put our name up here? So
Yes.
the village up? Oh,
We were talking about that.
Yeah,
Yes.
like that.
Very good, well,
Good point.
like I say, the residents would probably not mind getting something especially when it has our community events in it.
Yes.
So I would like to see it myself personally too, so we'll enjoy it for you.
And we are the village. Yeah, I
Yes.
see a township of Armada, but we're, we're separate governments, so, okay.
So they'll be,
Just like you have the village of Romeo,
Yep.
the Root
Yes.
Township.
Yeah,
so they'll be very helpful for you
mm-hmm,
and probably our community. So,
yep,
Yes.
hope so.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
Very good, thank you. All right, yeah.
Yeah.
No, take a roll call? No.
No, we don't need a roll call.
All right, go ahead. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you.
Look forward to working with you.
Up and coming agenda items, is there any?
Next meeting, I will be inviting Lakestone Bank to our meeting to discuss some FDIC regulations and some changes that we'll need to make to some of our bigger investment accounts to make sure that we fall within the FDIC insurance on them.
Okay. Would that be our local representative from the bank here then, Joe?
Dorinda will probably attend, also their whole bank director
Can they
for
bring us
investments.
one?
There's all.
Okay, let's see, what did I do with? I don't have anything else here.
Here, that's where we're at.
Yeah,
Okay,
okay.
so it's
Well, at
that
this time, the
time.
floor is open up to citizen comments. Anyone want to address the council at this time? State your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes, please. Seeing none, hearing none. Council comments at this time?
All right, moving right along.
Hey, we're doing good here.
It's been a while.
Yeah, we're super loud.
Community events. Any community events that is forthcoming?
Homecoming parade? We have another meeting.
Well, the
before that.
homecoming
It's the end of the
pool
month.
parade.
That's the 29th, 29th of
Yes.
September.
So that's gonna be great for our kids and then community period. Then also the Armageddon will be coming up around that time.
That's, I think, that's the
That's
next weekend,
October 6th
Yeah, the
weekend.
first weekend.
Yeah, so that's before our meeting also.
The Romeo to Richmond relays coming up.
Yeah, that's coming
I
up.
think it's
Yeah.
17.
So it's
Yeah.
17.
All right. Anything else the council would like to add to the community events? If not, we have no closed session tonight. And adjournment is in order.
Time is 7:47. I make a motion to adjourn.
Support?
Moved and supported, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried.